G'day, Ben from Duck Plain Chicken here with the next video in this series, the build of the Bandai 1/144th scale WUG from round Vernian Vifam. I'm happy with the way the arms work now, so I need to make a start on the legs and how I'm going to get the wiring from the torso of the body down the leg and into the base. So I'm going to start sort of at the top of the leg and the sort of hip area. Now the top of the leg has this piece here, and then you have a poly cap that sort of gets sandwiched in here that holds it's like this axle piece that sort of sits in here, and yeah, it sort of goes through the hole there and into a poly cap. But I'm really not happy with the way that system works, so I want to do something a little bit differently. I'm going to use a ball joint. So you can see this is the socket here, and this is from the modeler assistant set I bought on AliExpress. This is ball joint set 002. So what I want to do is get this in here so it matches up with the hole. So it seems to fit okay. And then I've had to trim the peg a little bit, and so that way it is pushing up hard against the back edge, so that when I put the the corresponding piece in there, it won't sort of break or move or anything. Now the other thing that I am sort of considering is how to do this top piece here. So this is in two halves, and there are these little pegs in here which correspond to these pegs here. Now if I sort of assemble this all in place, let's quickly do that. Piece goes like that, piece goes like that. So I would sort of have to assemble it and then paint it all as one sort of unit, which I don't really want to do. Get this right, let's get this set up first. Alright, then this piece goes on here, and this piece goes on here. So what I'd like to do is make it so that this top piece I can just sort of lift off and magnetize it, because I think that's a lot better than trying to sort of paint that properly all as one piece. The other thing I've got to consider is that I've got to route a wire through it as well. So the more that I can have these pieces individual and then sort of assembled as separate units, the better off I'll be, I think. So what I need to do with these bits here is, I think I will capitalize on these holes that are already here, and what I'll do is I'll put some magnets in there. So let's do that. Let's get that socket in there. Okay, so I'm going to use some gap filling CA glue, and let's have a look what I've got in magnets. I think so. Let's see what we can do here. Get that in place, and then get that sort of sandwiched in there somehow. Okay, it is not pretty, but I've got the two magnets in there. And I managed to get super glue sort of everywhere. The other thing I need to consider is how I'm going to get the wire from the top up here into the body. And I think what I need to do is maybe drill a hole on the side somewhere. Trying to work out where it's going to be least visible. It needs to be somewhere near the hole, but then I've got to consider, you know, this thing goes over the top of it as well, because I'm pretty sure I'm going to need this area in here to attach a socket for the next part of the leg, for a joint that goes in there. Alright, I'm going to leave this dry for a good amount of time before I sort of start messing about with where the hole needs to go. What I can do is start working on these pieces here, and so I need to get some very small magnets, sort of 1 by 1 mil in here where these pegs are, and I reckon I might be just better off drilling the peg all the way through, because there's not a lot of clearance there. Okay, I don't have any 1 mil diameter magnets, but I do have some 2 mil, so I think I'll end up using those. Okay, get 2 mil drill bit in my pin vise here, and I'm going to try and make sure if I trim that off. Alright, so I've drilled a hole all the way through. I do need to clean up this area a little bit because I want next to no kind of protrusions on the inside. Okay, so with both holes drilled now, I need to, of course, work out the polarity of the magnets. So this bit goes here. I need to work out, let's go that way. Alright, so got one magnet in there. Okay, get some glue on that before it falls out. Okay, and if you look carefully in there, there's still a bit of an inset, and the reason for that is because I want to make it so that I can fill that with putty and smooth it over nicely. Just double check that this is going to work the way it should. Feels like it's attracting. I don't want to butt it up too hard against it because it does have super glue on it. Let that dry. Okay, all the super glue has had some time to set properly, so now with the magnets in place, this just snaps on. And this bit isn't load bearing at all, so it literally just sort of hangs on the top of the leg, and that works pretty well, I think. So before I fill in these holes, I need to glue these two halves together. Use some Revell contactor cement. Put a generous amount around the edges so that when I squeeze it together, there's a little bit that squeezes out that I can sand back later. Now, I think I mentioned this in the last video, there's a little bit of play in the pins for these pieces. So when you join the halves together, you just do want to make sure that they are aligned as well as you can get. The last thing you want is sort of a step in that seam. Now, I can't glue the two halves of this piece together yet because I need to work out how I'm going to connect the next piece of the leg, and also I think I've made a kind of determination on how the wire is going to feed through. So first things first, I need to take these pegs out. Okay. Now I'll take the Proxxon sander and clean all that up and try to make it as flush as possible. I think what I'm going to do is use one of these joints, and this is from the Modeler Assistant set that I also bought from AliExpress, SBJ002, ball joint set 02, and so you can see you get everything you need to create a ball joint. So we get these two pieces and snap them together. This stuff is tight, like it's really, I don't know yeah, what sort of plastic they use, but it's really tight joint. So what I want to be able to do is take this and basically have it set in place in here for the next piece. So we have these two halves for the lower leg. All right. And basically they're supposed to join in there. Normally you would have a poly cap in this bit and it would slide onto the peg there and give it some sort of motion. Give it some articulation, I should say. So I need to work out how I'm going to join these two things together, and I want the pivot about in the same place as where it would be normally. So I think I need a block of styrene with a hole in it that I could just sort of stick that in, and a similar thing on this piece in here, so that I could just you know, take these pieces apart. Also got to work out how the wire is going to route through as well. Done a little bit more work. I've taken off the pegs and just ground that away with the Proxon, and I've just put some extra thin cement just to smooth it over a bit. Now if I put this together, and of course I know the cap bit works. The other thing that I've done is, if I take this off, you can see there's a little hole, so that's going to be sort of hidden, and that hole feeds up, you can see at the bottom there, so that's just so the wire can go through. Alright, so I think I'm pretty much ready to glue this together. There's going to be I've got this block of styrene here with a 3mm hole drilled in it, and that will basically sit in here. I'll glue it in place once I've got the two halves of the leg component done. It's a little bit tricky to get lined up, but you get the idea. So that'll go somewhere like that, and that will allow this joint to plug in on that side. There's a little bit of a tight fit. It's pretty sure it's 3mm hole, but anyway. And then for these bigger bits, you can see again I've ground out all sort of structural plastic in there and cleaned it up with some extra thin. But then the next bit will be putting I guess a plug that ball joint so that it meets up with the other piece. Alright, so I'll get those glued together. Now for this bottom component, there's actually a bit of a natural sort of shelf in there. You can see that sort of rim about halfway down there. So I've created this little block here just out of some 1mm styrene and some 2mm styrene rod. And so the idea of this is that it'll give me a base to drill some holes for the other peg, and so it'll go something like that. So it'll sit in place like that, and then I need to basically stick some bits of styrene on the side just to give it some reinforcement when I'm applying pressure from above. So I'm still waiting for these to dry. I will drill a 3mm hole in here. This will be for, you know, the other post on the ball joint. And so I think I've sort of got a bit of a method going as to what I need to do. So I'll go ahead and do that and then show you some progress. Okay, I've done some work on the lower leg. So let me take these halves apart so you can see what's going on. First of all, just a strip of 0.5mm styrene sheet just to block up this hole. I'm going to putty that in and rescribe lines. The reason for that is because I wouldn't mind if I can get a little bit of height out of the legs, and I think if the joint's a little bit higher, then there's the potential for this hole to be seen, so I'm better off filling it up. You can see the platform that I've glued in with various bits of styrene, the 3mm hole in the center there. It doesn't go all the way through. And I've also put in a bit of styrene block in there just to sort of support it. So now I should be ready to glue these two halves together so that we end up with that on the bottom and that on the top. Okay, I'll leave that to dry for a little bit. Also glued the two halves of the top section of the leg. So I'm just waiting for that to dry before I sort of sand that, clean that up. And also I want to wait till it dries properly before I drop the little styrene block with the hole in it for the joint peg. So I'll leave that dry a little bit longer. Right, while I've been waiting for other bits and pieces to dry, I've just assembled the base of the foot. So it's kind of a nice system they've done here. At least you've got a little bit of sort of play in the toes and the heel. I think I need to do some work on this though to get a magnetic pogo pin into the base. So I want to do it through one of the legs obviously, and in the bottom of the foot there. So I'm hoping I can get one down in the middle there and have the wire come up through the leg. This is I guess the ankle. The way this works is that there is a polycap that goes in there that attaches to the lower leg, and then this attaches to the foot, sort of like so. It's a bit hard while it's all in pieces. You kind of get an idea. So again, this sort of relies on taking the two halves and sandwiching it, you know, through this hole here. I don't really want to go down that path, so I'm going to have to again probably put a bit of plar plate sort of in the bottom here, and then a hole, and then I can use one of those ball joints. While I'm at it, I might take out these pegs, if it'll focus. I'll take out these pegs as well, so I'll just use the grinder to get rid of those. Okay, a little bit more work on the ankle. Just a bit of styrene on the sides to block the holes, and then I'll fill those with putty. I'll put this base plate in, so there'll be a hole that goes in there. I may have to put another layer of 1mm styrene in there just to reinforce the hole that I drill. The issue with putting the plate in the bottom here, I actually had to shave down the top bits of these rungs that hold the feet parts in, and you can see I've also managed to get a magnetic pogo pin in the bottom there. So it's all going to be very tight. I think you know, I'm going to have to get the hole that the peg will go in, but there'll also be a hole that the wires come up through. That's how I've sort of dealt with the power coming up through the foot. Now for the waist that's going to hold the legs in place, I'll put a couple of bits of plar plate in there. The reason for that is because I've taken this polycap kind of bit, which has come from Wave PCO4. It's just one of these things, and I sort of cut the lip off it there. And what this will allow me to do is take one of these ball sockets and sort of hold it in there, and then that will marry up to the top of the leg. So it'll hold it nice and firm. So what I need to do is get this in place, and you can see how that's going to look. So the other thing I'm going to do is put another bit of styrene over the top of that, just to reinforce it. There we go. And then we'll get some glue on it. Alright, so that's how that's going to look. And while I'm here, I might as well install the poly cap that goes in. So this is about the only poly cap I think in the, or a couple of poly caps I'm going to use that come with the kit, and that's for holding in the arms, just because it's going to work perfectly fine. So the way it works, you put the poly cap in it, and then you've got this plastic cap that goes over the top and seals it in place. So I'll get some glue on here. Drop this on, make sure it's seated properly, and that will prevent the poly cap from pushing through. Okay, so I think that's another step done. Been doing some cleanup work on this foot piece. So it doesn't look smooth, but to the touch it feels pretty good. And I've also drilled the hole in here for the peg. And I think I need to drill another hole to allow the wires to come up. So I've soldered a couple of wires onto that magnetic pogo pin. So of course this will go up through the leg and into the body to meet up with the Arduino board. This part, sort of doing some putty work, and I should say the putty I'm using for this is actually Mr. Dissolve putty. So this stuff is really good for really fine sort of gaps to fill. So I'm waiting for that stuff to dry, and then of course I'll keep sanding. Let's see, some more sort of gap filling on these parts, which are the top of the legs, just where the magnets are. So waiting for that to dry, sanding a seam that goes all the way across. And then we get to the lower leg. So you can see here what I've done is I've just glued the two halves together. I've started filling in the holes here with putty. There's a couple of sink marks here too that I've filled. And one of the biggest issues that I have is this bit here where the panel lines, you can see there's a little bit of a step there between panel lines. So even if I was to rescribe those lines, it'd still be a bit of a problem down the middle on the front and also on the back. So that is the back and on the front. So for me, it's not really worth rescribing them. I've actually got a completely different plan for that. And I can show you what I've done on one of the other ones. So basically recreating that banding using some styrene sheet, some strips. So it's not perfect, but keep in mind, eventually we're going to have this piece go over it. So you're not going to see a lot of it anyway, but it's just a lot neater than having a step sort of between, running down the middle of it. So let me sort of show you the steps of going about that. The first thing I need to do is basically sand down all the detail. So I'll take a sanding stick and I'll basically get all this as smooth as possible. Okay, you can see I've sanded off the majority of the detail. So all those panel lines are gone. There's a couple of gaps in here, but I'm not too fussed about those. By the time we get the strips across, you're not really going to notice those anyway. But you can see I have literally taken all the those strips down to just the background plastic. And for this process, I'm going to use some styrene card. This is 0.25 millimeters, so pretty thin stuff. You could probably get away, if you could find something thinner, you could probably get away with that as well. This is a little bit thick, but I will sand it down once it's all sort of glued in place. So I have cut a number of strips which are about a millimeter wide, maybe a little bit less, and I just eyeballed it. I wasn't too fussed about it. Like I said, by the time you get the top bit on it, you're not going to see a lot of what's going on anyway. So I've found that the best way to go about this is to use Tamiya extra thin, and I want to get a little bit on the end just to start off the process. And I'm going to start it there somewhere. Okay, so I'm going to sort of start it there, and you'll notice that I haven't I've offset it from the corner a little bit where it'll join up again. I just find that that's going to be a little bit easier to join up rather than doing it on a corner. So then I get a bit more glue on the strip and then run a bit along here, and I want to try and bend it around and pin it in place. And I want to try and get it as straight as possible to the top. Alright, and I'll repeat the process. So a bit of glue on the strip, a little bit of glue on the surface. Hold it with one finger, bend it around, try to pin it down a little bit. Don't worry if you don't get it spot on the first time. We will be able to sort of move it around a little bit with the application of a bit more glue. Alright, and then this is where we try to bend it around and try to cut it as close as possible. To where we need it to meet the start. So just have a quick look around, make sure that it's reasonably straight. It's a bit hard to tell because it's not perfectly square, the whole piece, so you've sort of got to make a bit of a judgment call on it. And then this bit wants to keep lifting up. And then what you can do is, if you need to adjust it anymore, you can actually apply more glue just sort of along the edges, and then that'll give you the ability to, you know, just nudge it a little bit in places. I think this one's all right. Now, where you see that join, there's like a little bump, the plastic there, that's fine. You'll be able to sand that down once it's all dried. And then I go ahead and repeat the process multiple times. What I do though is to set the join at a different place each time, so that way I'm not going to get a really obvious sort of seam. So let's get the next bit I've pre-cut. I might start this one on this side. Now this is where it gets a little bit trickier because you need to make sure that you're running it parallel to the existing one. Actually, looking at that piece, looks a bit thin compared to the other one. You know what? The inconsistency in the strips that will be noticeable on this will be less noticeable than a big seam down the middle of it. And the other thing that you could do is sand off all the detail like what I've done, and then just re-scribe it from scratch. That's sort of another option. I kind of don't really have the patience for that, to be perfectly honest. Re-scribing panel lines is one of my least favourite things because I'm not very good at it. And I tend to find that the results I get aren't great. So wherever possible, I will recreate the panel lines a different way. Not always possible, but in this case, there is an alternative. Okay, so you get the idea. I'll go ahead and do the rest of them. Now obviously for these little bits I need to sort of cut them a bit shorter, but the principle is the same. You can sort of see on this one what I've done. Alright, so I'll go away and do the rest of that, and then leave that to dry, and then we can move on to the next step, which is sort of sanding it back a little bit and checking for, because obviously it thickens up this piece, which is going to make it a little bit more difficult for this piece to move. So there's a couple of other sort of modifications I have to do. Okay, so I've finished adding the strip styrene to the knee. It is a little bit rough in places, but I still think it's going to be better than having that really obvious seam down the middle. That's going to have that step that's going to be too hard to scribe. So I've done that. I need to clean up the seams on the rest of it. Now there is a little bit of detail in here which I'm not going to bother with. I'm actually going to sand that out. I'll keep this panel line along the bottom, but this little back piece here I think I might just get rid of. The other thing I've done is I've drilled a hole in the bottom foot piece ready for the peg. I do have to drill another hole in there for the wires to come up through, so I'll do that off camera. But just when I'm sanding this stuff, just to sort of quickly show you what I use for sanding these pieces, I've got a series of sanding sponges. This is 240 grit. And I'll start with that because that'll be the more coarse one. And as you sand, you'll be able to see, especially on this brown plastic, you'll be able to see those shiny bits. So that's the bits that are the low spots. So I need to get down to the point where you can no longer see that those shiny parts. Okay, so you get an idea, getting closer and closer. Okay, so you can see we're almost there. I'll rescribe this bottom bit before I sort of sand the rest of that, but you can see the 240 grit. Next I'll go with the 400. And once I've sort of got all the sanding done, I can give it a grey primer. And what that'll do is that'll highlight any spots that I've missed, any low spots or high spots. So especially on an older kit, you know, where you get a lot of sort of glue seams. So that's the 400 grit. Still a minor low spot in there that I can see. And some of the really minor spots, the primer filler will actually fill it reasonably well. But you want to sort of minimize that. So once I've done the 400, I'll go up to 600. And that'll be smooth enough to take the paint. So I'll keep working on that. Need to do some work on the rescribing down here. The other thing that I can do is take my 240 sponge and just gently rub it across the styrene strips that I put in, just to knock off any bits that are sort of a bit raised. And I can take a brush to clean it up, and then the test is going to be whether this actually fits over it, and it is sticking a little bit, so it's getting caught. And that's because of these sort of gaps in here, these lips here. So what I'm going to do is get rid of those. I'm actually going to hit it with a file. I can scrape it out with a knife. Okay, So sort of scraping that area out there. So you can see the difference between the two sides. This one is, it gets very thin at the edge there. This one's not. So I need to do the same thing on the other side. Okay, so let's test how this goes. I think it goes that way. Yeah, that goes over a lot easier now. It's not getting caught on those strips. There's not a lot of motion in this knee, like it's not going to go back very far, but it helps reduce the amount of paint that'll get taken off and scratched off. So yeah, I'm pretty happy with that, I think. Okay, so there's still some work I have to do. Get the block in here for the peg, line it up to this one in here. Also drill a hole in here for the peg on the foot. So I'll do that all off camera and then sort of show you. It's just a bit tricky. I'm going to have my head right over it, so I won't be filming it. Yeah, we're getting there as far as the legs go. Alright, you'll have to excuse this one foot that keeps coming off. I haven't glued anything obviously, but at the moment it's just sort of held together with hopes and dreams. But the concept works. I've managed to get the wires from the pogo pin down here all the way through the leg, and at the moment it's just coming out the back here, but basically it ends up in the torso. So that sort of works and I'm happy about that. Take that leg off. So the knee work I did has come up pretty well, I think. I won't know how great it all is until I get a grey primer on it, so that'll sort of be the next step for the legs. But if I take this leg off carefully, you can see the wires going through that hole, and that has, you know, worked really well. You can hardly see it. Carefully take this off. So you can see the wire sort of going through down that hole down there and out the side. You can see it sort of just runs down the gap there. I've put in obviously all the little ball joints. So you can see we've got a ball joint here, stuck into a bit of styrene, and also on the top there. And then finally for this foot bit, you can see I've drilled a 1mm hole down the bottom there for the wires to come out. And that's all good to go. So I think I'm going to call this video done, just because, yeah, like the arms, I spent more time than I thought I would on it, but it's a good point to finish up the video there. With the arms and the legs, I will get around to priming them, probably off camera, and so I can do all those sort of final cleanup and that sort of thing on them. Next episode is going to be all about the torso and the head, getting that all sorted out. So I have to work out how all the electronics are going to be consolidated into this reasonably small space. So till then, I'll catch you later.